My name is Rachel Moore. I'm 28 years old, and this is how I took revenge on the people who erased me like I never existed and lived to regret it. The camera fades in on a woman standing alone in the darkness. She's parked across the street from a warm, glowing house, the kind with string lights, laughter spilling out through the windows, music humming low in the background. Inside, a celebration is unfolding. Her eyes stay fixed on one particular figure inside, her younger sister, glowing in a white and gold dress, surrounded by people raising glasses. There's a cake, a banner. Congratulations, Emma and Daniel. And Rachel? She's not in there, not invited, not even acknowledged. Her voice comes in, low and steady, almost too calm. That's my childhood home, the one with the blue shutters and the chipped mailbox I painted when I was 10, the one where I learned how to braid my sister's hair, the one I walked out of 10 years ago, and somehow never returned to until now. The sounds from the party inside swell, silverware clinking, someone shrieking with laughter. Her father claps Daniel on the back like he raised him. Her aunt kisses Emma's cheek. Her brother's holding up his baby for everyone to coo at. Rachel leans against the car hood, arms crossed. She isn't crying. Her expression is unreadable, something between grief and detachment. I wasn't invited. Again, I wasn't there for Christmas or Thanksgiving. I wasn't asked to help plan my own mother's funeral. They didn't even text. It's like I died the day I left. The screen briefly flashes a memory. Rachel at 18, storming out with a backpack, her face red with hurt. Her father doesn't chase after her. Her mother just turns away. Emma shrinks back like she's scared. No one stops her. Back in the present, Rachel lets out a breath, long and hollow. But I didn't leave that night because I was angry. I left because I was invisible. Because when your family decides you don't matter, there's nothing left to fight for. Her gaze flickers toward the house again. They say blood is thicker than water. But let me tell you something. When you're the forgotten one, the cast off, the shadow no one remembers, blood doesn't mean a damn thing. She starts to walk away from the car, her heels crunching against the gravel, every step deliberate. I watch them move on without me. I watch them build a version of our family where I didn't exist. And I let them believe I was gone for good. She pauses at the edge of the driveway, her figure silhouetted by the soft glow of the party lights. But what they didn't know is that the one they forgot was watching. And I came back unforgettable. I grew up in a nowhere town in Ohio. You've probably passed through places like it without even noticing. Rows of peeling houses, rusted mailboxes, one gas station that sold expired snacks, and a church on every corner preaching forgiveness that no one actually practiced. I was the middle child, the quiet one, the one who saw everything. Samantha was the golden girl, the type who got applause just for breathing. Cheer captain by sophomore year, always the top of her class, and never grounded, not even once. She had that kind of smile that made adults forgive her before she even said a word. Josh, our baby brother, was wild and reckless. My parents treated him like a glass doll they had to protect at all costs. Even when he started sneaking out at 13, getting suspended at 15, and later using. And then there was me, Rachel, the one who kept her head down. I read too much, asked too many questions, felt things too deeply. My father used to say I was too much drama. My mom, God bless her cowardly heart, would just wring her hands and whisper, "Don't provoke him, Rachel." My father was the kind of man who needed a villain in the room, and more often than not, I filled that role. He could go days without speaking to me. Other days, He'd make sure I knew exactly how I disappointed him, with my tone, my clothes, my opinions. And when things went wrong, when Josh's room reeked of weed or money went missing from the garage, it was me. You're always sneaking around. I know what you are. He'd say that in front of the whole family, and they'd just let him. Samantha would look away. Mom would nod. Even Josh, when he wasn't high or passed out, would shrug and mutter, whatever. The day I left, I was 18. My mom had accused me, again, of stealing from her purse. This time, $50. I hadn't even touched it. But it didn't matter. Nothing I said mattered. I packed a backpack. No one stopped me. No one came after me. No phone calls. No letters. I could have died in a ditch, and no one in that house would have blinked. I ended up in Chicago, thinking I'd find freedom. But freedom's expensive when you're young and alone. I slept in my car for 3 months, kept my clothes folded in a duffel bag, used gas stations as bathrooms. I worked double shifts at diners, cleaned offices at night, and took online classes during my breaks because I knew no one was coming to save me. I put myself through night school. It took me 7 years. I started as a receptionist in a small legal firm, moved up to paralegal, then finally, passed the bar. By 27, I was a licensed attorney. The irony? I spent my days defending people who had no one. The forgotten, the accused, the misjudged. People like me. And just when I thought maybe, just maybe, I was healing, I got the call. A distant aunt. I didn't even recognize her number. Rachel, I thought you should know. Your mother passed. It was cancer. They buried her last month. I couldn't breathe. I had to ask her to repeat it. And when she did, I felt something snap inside me. Not grief, not yet. Just the cold realization that even in death, my mother had left me out. No one told me she was sick. No one told me she was dying. And then came the second hit, a letter from a law firm back in Ohio. The will had been settled. Everything. The house, the savings, the pension, the jewelry box I used to sneak into as a kid had been split between Samantha and Josh. My name wasn't mentioned, not even in passing. That's when I stopped trying to heal. That's when I stopped pretending I didn't care. They hadn't just cut me off. They'd erased me, like I was never part of the family at all. I remember standing in my apartment, letter in hand, trembling, not with sadness, not with confusion, but with clarity. If they wanted me gone so badly, then I'd give them what they asked for. I'd become the ghost they made me. But this time, I'd haunt every corner of their perfect little lives. I didn't want revenge out of hate. I wanted them to feel it, to know what it was like to be discarded, forgotten, rewritten out of the story like you were never born. I wanted to remind them, the girl they tried to bury, she learned how to rise. I arrived in town without telling anyone. It had been 10 years since I last set foot in that place. Yet the second I crossed into Maple Creek, it felt like I had stepped into some warped time loop. The cracked sidewalks, the barber shop with the spinning red pole, even the old grocery store with the cash-only sign hanging crooked in the window. It was all still there, like my absence hadn't made a single dent. I didn't go to the house first. I went to her grave. It took me 20 minutes to find the headstone. I walked past names I recognized. Teachers, classmates' grandparents, the boy who used to sit behind me in math and flick pencil shavings at my back. And then I saw it. Elaine Moore Loving, Mother and Daughter, 1959 to 2023. The lettering was polished, freshly carved. There were flowers, not real ones, but plastic, clipped into the grass to stay upright. But what hit me like a punch to the ribs wasn't the death date. It was the inscription. Loving mother and daughter. That was it. Nothing else. No mention of her children. and certainly no mention of me as I stood there, trying to understand how a woman with 3 children could be laid to rest with no trace of them. I heard a voice behind me. Wasn't she Samantha's mom too? Yeah, I thought she had 3 kids. Or was it just 2? Oh, I remember Samantha, the pretty one, always so polite. What happened to the other girl? Rachel, was it? I didn't turn around. I just let the words settle like ash in my lungs. They had done it. They'd erased me so completely, even the neighbors were rewriting the past. I left the cemetery in a daze. My feet took me where my brain hadn't caught up yet, straight to the strip mall where my father's real estate agency used to be. Except now the sign read, "More legacy properties, new logo, fresh paint, 2 shiny glass doors." And right there on the front window, family owned, built on integrity, legacy, and love. I almost laughed. Inside, the walls were lined with professional portraits. Samantha in a blazer, smiling with her teeth. Josh pretending to look like a businessman. Their Instagram was even worse. Reels of home tours, speeches about honoring our father's dream. Quotes about family values. Family. Values. I scrolled further. Post after post about their dad's wisdom, their mom's sacrifice, not a single photo of me, not even in the old throwbacks. That's when I realized my father was dead. I stared at one post, a 2-year-old photo of Josh at the cemetery, captioned, "2 years today, still making you proud, Dad." He died, and no one told me. I didn't even get the dignity of mourning him. I marched into the building, straight past the secretary and into the glass-walled conference room where Josh sat typing. He didn't look surprised to see me, just annoyed, like I was a plumbing leak in the middle of a house showing. "Well," he said, leaning back in the leather chair, "the prodigal sister returns." I didn't sit. "You didn't think I deserved to know our father died?" He shrugged, a real, actual shrug, like I'd asked if he ate the last cookie. "You were always the dramatic one, Rachel. We figured you'd appreciate a clean break." A clean break, like I was a tumor they'd neatly removed. "You didn't just forget me," I said, voice low. "You erased me." He didn't deny it. He didn't even flinch. "Look," he said, standing, straightening his tie. "We moved on. You made your choices. Don't come back now expecting to rewrite history." I walked out without saying another word, because I knew right then this wasn't just negligence. This wasn't a family drifting apart. It was a decision. They cut me out, and if that's how they saw me, a ghost, a shadow, a story best left untold, then fine. Let them believe I was a ghost, because now I'll haunt them until they beg for the truth. I moved in the shadows, quiet as a whisper, careful not to tip my hand too soon. Revenge is an art, and like any artist, I had to study the canvas before I started making my marks. The first thing I did was dive into the family business. Moore Legacy Properties wasn't just a real estate agency. It was a fortress built on lies and blood money. Samantha and Josh had made sure of that. They wore smiles in public and made their family values pitch, but behind those polished smiles were secrets. Secrets I could unravel with a little digging. Using my legal background, I knew how to search public records, how to look at property titles and deed transfers. I found the first crack in their facade with a property I had once known well, a small, run-down house on Maple Avenue that my father had sold to an elderly widow named Mrs. Halverson. She'd been living there for over 50 years, her home filled with memories, her life centered around that crumbling house. But it didn't matter to my father. He'd low-balled her for the land, pressured her into selling. He'd told her the property was going to be redeveloped. She signed the papers, signed away her home, her legacy. But what she didn't know, And what no one had bothered to tell her was that my father had flipped the land a month later, making a tidy profit. And then the land was sold again. And again. That wasn't all. I found more. Dozens of similar transactions, each one shadier than the last. Hush payments, overvalued appraisals, backdoor sales hidden behind fake LLCs. My father had built an empire on other people's suffering. People too old, too frail, or too trusting to know what they were losing. And now, Samantha and Josh were continuing the scam. They were making the same dirty deals, selling off old properties to unsuspecting buyers, pocketing the difference. I had all the evidence I needed, but I wasn't going to throw it away carelessly. No, I needed to make sure they felt the heat, the weight of their actions pressing down on them until they couldn't breathe. I started slow, just a whisper here, a letter there. I filed anonymous legal notices with the local court exposing the fraudulent deals, the tax violations. I sent copies of the contracts to the people who had been swindled, and I pushed them to go to the press. It was like watching a fire start with a single spark. The first lawsuit came in the form of a class action suit from one of the elderly victims who had been scammed out of their land. From there, the floodgates opened, but I wasn't done. I contacted a real estate blogger, someone who prided himself on uncovering industry corruption. I fed him tidbits of information, just enough to hook him. He dug into more legacy properties, peeling back the layers of lies like a snake shedding its skin. Soon, his blog posts started popping up. Scam or legacy? More properties under investigation. And my family's legacy was under attack. That's when the threats started. It was subtle at first. A text, a short, cold message. You're digging in places you shouldn't. Stop now. And then another. I know where you live. My phone would buzz in the middle of the night. But I wasn't scared. I had been alone for so long. I had built this new life from nothing, and I wasn't about to let them take it away. The threats escalated. I started to get followed. I could feel eyes on me when I walked out of my apartment, when I went to the grocery store, even when I sat down in a cafe with my laptop. Someone was watching. I knew it wasn't just paranoia. The world had a way of showing you when you were being hunted. My apartment was broken into. But nothing was stolen. Nothing was even touched, except everything. The books on my shelves were moved, the papers on my desk shuffled, the lamp knocked over. A deliberate message. They wanted me to feel unsettled, to know that they could get to me anytime. But I had been preparing for this. I installed cameras in the corners of my apartment. I started keeping paper trails of everything. The emails, the messages, the files. I sent everything to a secure cloud that couldn't be traced. I wasn't playing the game to lose. Not this time. This time, I was in control. And then, one day, I found something I wasn't expecting. It was a box of old donations in a thrift store. A hodgepodge of things that didn't even belong together. Old clothes, dusty knickknacks, faded photos. But tucked in the bottom, hidden between a stack of used cookbooks, was something that made my heart stop. My mother's old journal. I flipped through the pages, the familiar scrawl of her handwriting staring back at me. There was nothing earth-shattering at first, just the usual small talk about daily life. But then, toward the back, I saw something that made my stomach churn. She wrote about me, about how she regretted how she had treated me, how she never stood up for me against my father's cruelty. She wrote about her fear, some people want revenge in pieces, slow, satisfying slivers. I wanted an explosion, A single detonation that would turn their carefully constructed empire to ash. I scheduled the email leak for 9 a.m. on a Monday. Every major news outlet in Ohio, every legal firm, every housing rights organization. I attached files, bank statements, fake shell companies, testimonies from elderly victims, internal memos from more legacy properties, everything tied together in a neat, numbered portfolio of truth. But before that happened, I wanted one final moment, one face to face with Samantha. I chose the place carefully, a forgotten family owned property on the edge of town, an old farmhouse my father had acquired under suspicious means. It was quiet, secluded, and poetic. Samantha pulled up in a sleek black SUV, stepping out in stilettos and a trench coat like she was walking into a boardroom. "You wanted to talk?" she said, arms crossed. "Let's talk." I led her into the crumbling house. Dust coated everything. The wallpaper was peeling. There were rat droppings in the corners. Seemed fitting for the rot they'd built their fortune on. I didn't waste time. "I know about the land scams, the fraud, the money laundering. I know how you kept it all going even after Dad died. I know about the hush payments, the shell companies, the off-the-record sales." Samantha didn't blink. "Rachel, you always did have a flair for fiction. You think a little internet digging makes you dangerous?" She stepped closer, the usual syrup in her voice, the old condescending tilt of her head. "You were always the unstable one, the bitter one. Maybe if you'd stayed, you could have been part of this. But you chose to leave." I smiled, slowly. "I recorded this conversation the second I walked in. You're not getting out of this one with a smile and a lie." Her eyes twitched. She scanned the room, looking for a phone, a camera. She knew I was serious. "You're bluffing." "No, Sam, I'm done bluffing." I let the silence thicken. Then I spoke again, low and final. "All your accounts were frozen this morning. Every cent, every fake holding. I found the clause in the federal housing statute your team skipped over. Your assets are under federal review." Her jaw dropped. "You're lying." "Call your bank," I said. "I'll wait." She didn't, because she knew. And then the door creaked open behind us. Josh stormed in, red-faced and huffing like a storm cloud. "What the hell is going on?" he barked. "She's blackmailing us," Samantha spat. "She hacked something. Get her out of here." Josh charged toward me, fists clenched, teeth bared. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. "Touch me," I said, calmly, "and I'll make sure your son grows up visiting you behind glass." That stopped him cold. He froze mid-step, color draining from his face. "How do you—" "I know everything, Josh, about the dummy scholarships, about the unreported rental income, about the threats you sent to witnesses." They stood there, both of them, unraveling in real time. Samantha tried one last desperate play. "You think the world's going to care about some old paperwork and bitter memories? We're respected. We donate. We sponsor events." I pulled the USB drive from my pocket and placed it on the dusty table between us. "Not anymore." Then I walked out. I didn't turn back. At 9:01 a.m., the story hit the wire. More legacy scandal. Real estate powerhouse under FBI investigation. By 10 o'clock, the firm's office was surrounded by reporters. The employees were escorted out. By noon, a formal investigation had been announced. Samantha and Josh were trending on social media, not for their smiling family portraits, but for headlines like "Fraud, Family, and the Fall of the Moors." The best part? They didn't know how much more was coming, because I didn't just burn the house down. I salted the earth beneath it. The fallout came fast. Within days of the leak, more legacy properties collapsed like a house of cards built on lies. Clients backed out. Partners issued public statements of shock and disappointment. Employees resigned. The building was padlocked shut by the end of the week. By month's end, multiple families had come forward. People who had once been too scared, too confused, or too ashamed to fight. Now they had fuel. Now they had evidence. Now they had names. Class action lawsuits flooded the courts. The state launched its own investigation. Samantha was indicted for fraud, wire tampering, and obstruction of justice. She was photographed walking into the courthouse in a designer suit and handcuffs. Josh didn't get jail, but he didn't walk away clean either. He took a plea deal, probation, a heavy fine that nearly bankrupted him. His name? Ruined. His son? Taken out of private school. Their golden life? Gone. And me? I didn't celebrate. There were no champagne bottles, no toasts to revenge. I didn't even watch the press conferences. I had already seen everything I needed to. In their eyes, that day in the farmhouse, the moment they realized they couldn't twist the story anymore, that they weren't the heroes, that they had been seen. Instead, I took the settlement money. As a protected whistleblower, I was legally entitled to a portion of the fines recovered by the government, a significant portion, enough to change my life forever. And I did, just not the way they would have. I opened a non-profit legal clinic in Chicago, the Red Door Project. It started small, 2 rooms, 1 paralegal, and a broken coffee machine. But we grew fast. Word spread. Women came, bruised, shaken, desperate to be believed. Teens showed up, scared and silent, eyes heavy with the same sadness I used to carry. I hired people who reminded me of me, quiet, sharp-edged souls who had learned to fight alone, and I kept my mother's journal on my desk. Some days I hated it. Some days I opened it just to see her handwriting, just to feel something. On the worst days, I'd read the line about regret, about how she wished she'd fought for me. And even though I didn't forgive her, not fully, I understood her. Fear makes cowards out of people who were never given another choice. One Tuesday morning, 6 months after the trial, I came into the clinic early. There was a small envelope on my desk. No return address, no name. Inside, one line was handwritten in tight, careful script. I was wrong. I should have stood up for you. Forgive me. Mom. I stared at it for a long time. The paper trembled in my hands. Was it real? A final confession left behind in case I ever came back? Or maybe someone sent it, knowing I needed to hear it. A neighbor, a former church member, someone who'd seen everything and said nothing. I'll never know. But it helped, because revenge didn't fix the past. It didn't erase the nights I spent crying into a coat in my car, or the empty birthdays, or the way I flinched when someone said my name in anger. But it gave that girl, the one who left home at 18 with nothing but a duffel bag and shattered heart, justice. It gave her a voice. And now I give others theirs. I still drive by broken houses sometimes, the ones that look like they're barely hanging on. I still stop when I see a girl sitting alone at a bus stop at midnight, hugging herself like armor. Because I remember what it's like to be invisible. And now, I make damn sure no one forgets me again. Not ever. Rachel sits in a quiet room. No fancy backdrop. Just her, a wooden chair, and the camera. She's calm now, collected, a soft strength in her eyes. Not the kind that demands attention, but the kind that holds it. She leans forward slightly, elbows on her knees. No more walls, no more masks. They forgot me like I was nothing. But when I came back, I reminded them exactly who I am. There's no bitterness in her voice, just truth, steady, certain, earned. I used to think revenge would fix me, that making them hurt would somehow make me whole again. She pauses, then shakes her head gently. It didn't erase the pain. It didn't give me back the birthdays I spent alone or the years I spent wondering what I did wrong. She straightens, her face lit with quiet defiance. But it gave me something else. My power, my voice, myself. Cut to a quick montage. Rachel at the clinic, handing a young girl a hot drink, sitting across from a client in a courtroom, laughing with her small, scrappy staff. She's not the same woman who once stood outside her family's house like a stranger. She's not the girl they left behind. I'm not the girl crying in the dark anymore. I'm the woman who turned the lights on. She leans closer to the camera, not with vengeance, but with peace, the kind that only comes from reclaiming your story. So if someone made you feel invisible, just remember, the best revenge isn't loud. Her lips curve, not into a smirk, but a promise. It's unforgettable. The screen fades to black. One beat of silence. Then, for every girl who was left behind, you're not alone. End.